What should Counter-Strike do to help those with disabilities? And where should they draw the line? For example, if you're completely blind, you're kind of out of luck. I don't think you're ever going to get a playable experience in something as vision-based as first-person shooters are. But saying that, I never fail to be impressed by the ingenuity certain members of the community show when it comes to overcoming their own disabilities. Handy, for instance, who despite not having hands, would still wreck you in a competitive match. Another was Canny C, who claimed not to be able to see that well. Only able to make out light and a tiny bit of colour, he was still able to play CSGO by running it without lighting and with high contrast, which one day was patched out of the game. Although I can believe that there are people in a similar situation, Canny C's own story then got a bit questionable since screenshots were found of him on Hack servers, links were discovered between his account and scammers, and at one point he linked everybody to a dick pic on his Twitter profile. It's unfortunate if he was faking a disability to justify exploiting the game, but this raises another good point that needs to be tackled. At which point does a feature intended to help those with disabilities become an unfair advantage for everybody else? I'll be getting to that in a bit. For many people, their disabilities aren't quite so extreme as being literally blind. And for those people, there are small things a game like CSGO can change that would really help them. And I'm not saying these measures would level the playing field, but it would at least remove some of the unnecessary roadblocks a game has in place that makes it less disability friendly than it could be. I say this video is about disabilities, but the game's received a number of updates to help improve the visual and audio clarity in the game for normal people who wouldn't claim to have any visual or hearing impairments. We struggled to tell if footsteps were coming from above or below, so the game got improved surround sound. And when some of those new skins that came out last year blended into the backgrounds, my goodness, people didn't like that, did they? Camouflage has no place in the game, people cried. And Valve changed the maps, the models, and even rolled out a new feature to boost the visual clarity in-game to ensure that this wouldn't be a problem. So it seems like people are fine with updates that improve the experience for those without disabilities. But it seems it takes a bit more persuasion to want to help people with actual problems. If only they had a slider on the boost player contrast feature to make the effect as great or as little as you wanted, then Canny C's alleged problems with visibility in CSGO wouldn't even have been an issue. Like, if you ramp it up to max and it gives you an advantage, then it's clear that CSGO at normal settings still has problems with its model visibility. But on the other hand, if you ramp it up to maximum and discover it actually isn't fun nor beneficial for normal people to play like that, then it's still a great feature for those who have genuine sight problems, and who have no option other than to use it. It is a question of where to draw the line though. I saw one comment saying that if they were paralysed, it doesn't mean they deserve aimbot. This video won't offer answers. I want to use it to raise awareness to the issues those with disabilities face. I don't think it's fair for them just to be ignored, but at the same time, any possible solutions need to be well thought out and well implemented. Other games have managed it, so it is possible. The question I'm asking is, what's the right approach for Counter-Strike to take? Colourblindness, for instance. The Battlefield series comes to mind as being one that caters for this, by having a colourblind friendly feature to change the colour of the HUD so that people with that impairment can still tell which team's which. Did it break the game? No. Did you use it? Probably not. But did it vastly help those who needed it? Definitely. And how much should it help them? Should it only help them a bit? Or should it raise the quality of their experience to be on par with everybody else who doesn't have disabilities? What if it gives them an unfair advantage? And if it does, is that in practice or just in theory? And what's stopping everybody else from using it until Valve notices and nerfs it? There's a lot to discuss about disability options, so please don't just dismiss it as it would give them an unfair advantage. This video will focus on those with hearing problems. Let's start by imagining what it's like to be in their shoes. I actually had a brush with deafness a few years ago, ironically from wearing earplugs to stop me from going deaf in clubs. One of my ears got blocked, then I was too lazy to get it sorted, and eventually the other one got blocked as well. What followed were several days of me stumbling about in a sort of daze, not being able to hear much at all. Work was hard enough. I remember having to rely so much on lip reading. And it's not like people can immediately see that you're deaf. You can come across as rude or stupid. But the hardest thing of all for me was trying to defend B site on Dust 2, and trying to figure out if the enemy was going to come from double doors or from the hole in the wall. You take this stuff for granted. You think it's all about practice, good aim and game sense. But your hearing plays such a large part in almost every engagement. The abuse I got for being stupid for not hearing stuff quickly got old, and they tired of me apologising for not being able to hear. It wasn't a pleasant experience. At least for me, this was only temporary, but it was still bad enough that I looked into this issue for possible solutions, and there was not a lot out there. Eventually I had my ears syringed and it was back to normal. In fact, better than normal. I swear I was granted superhuman hearing for a couple of days, and I had a huge appreciation for rustling clothes and the sound of wind. It was amazing. But some people never get that relief. Some people go permanently deaf. Others suffer from tinnitus, as though that flashbang that went off in CSGO never went off. And others are born with no hearing at all. Six years ago, X75Tiger75X posted on the Counter-Strike subreddit. He has always been deaf, but likes to play a lot of FPS games. He thinks he's pretty good, given that he relies solely on visuals to play. However, since moving to competitive play, he started getting a few complaints because he doesn't react to things like footsteps. He also remarks on how difficult it is to communicate with teammates. He doesn't speak, because that's kind of hard when you can't hear what it sounds like. He instead types, and does that as much as he can. But as you can appreciate, this gets difficult when you're on B site of Mirage and the enemy is rushing apartments. Sorry, kitchen. Whatever. But what can these people do? Do they have to give up hope of ever playing competitive games, else risk frustrating their teammates? Or is there some way that they can overcome their limitations? And I'm not saying to get the advantage over everybody else, but just to have less of a disadvantage. A small feature like that goes a long way for those who need it. iDexCS came up with a solution. He created a CFG that displays on screen the sounds that are being played. If somebody's running about nearby, it'll say in the corner of the screen that there are footsteps playing. It's not exactly on par with actually being able to hear it, where it's coming from and how close it is, but it's infinitely better than nothing. This really helped his deaf friend, and he said had been used by others who were hard of hearing too. But is this legal? Surely this sort of stuff can't be allowed in competitive games. He reached out to a Faceit admin, asking if it would get him into trouble for using it, and he was told it was fine. Apparently. It doesn't seem the Faceit admin was too keen to say that it's fine outright, and he did add a few conditions, probably to avoid opening the floodgates to increasingly elaborate and advanced sound notifications from being developed. Which is why an official feature is all the more needed. Unfortunately, Valve recently updated the game, and whether or not it was intended, it broke this feature. I saw this post of his on Reddit at the time. It helped raise awareness of the situation, which I didn't know about, and even proposed some solutions. So I was disappointed that so many people in the comment section were quick to dismiss it, and to agree with the removal of the feature. No offence, but why? Why bother having an opinion about something that doesn't affect you, but that clearly helps others who need it? It baffles me. People seem to think that it gives you an unfair advantage, but I wonder if they've reached that conclusion by testing it for themselves, or if they're just assuming it does because it visualises information that they take for granted anyway. Of course, better headsets, faster PCs and higher refresh rate monitors are fine because they merely enhance the information that's already there. Even analog keys are fine, even if they allow for behaviour that can't be done using traditional setups. But the idea of converting audio information into a visible format? Ooh, that crosses the line. It's unnatural and doesn't belong in a competitive game like Counter-Strike. It sucks that they've got a disability, but that's life. Of course, that's also the easiest stance for the average person to take. Because let's face it, for most people this is not a problem. Not even for me. The way I see it, a feature like this is a small change that goes a long way for those who need it. Claiming it'll give you an unfair advantage angers me, actually. You can't condense this sort of thing down to a simple catchphrase like that and expect to be taken seriously. I wonder if even they believe it. How is being told there's a footstep sound better than being able to hear what it is, where it's coming from, while also being able to look at your crosshair in the middle of the screen? I doubt it is. Even if it notifies you before the sound is audible. So what? Adjust it so that it isn't. Or don't. Will it reveal sounds that you might not have heard? Totally depends on how it's integrated and what information it has access to. If it's something people are that worried about, I don't see why the calculations and information can't be processed server-side. There are so many possibilities for this kind of feature, it's short-sighted to the point of ignorance just to dismiss it outright. I wonder how much of this attitude is thanks to the cheating problem the game has. If the game didn't have a community hell-bent on finding any unfair advantage they could, perhaps people would be more accepting of a feature that helps those to overcome certain disabilities. One of the alternatives that iDexCS proposed was to mute the game when a feature like this is being used, which is apparently something that Fortnite can do. This would ensure that it doesn't give normal people an advantage, and that its use would be reserved for those whose hearing is impaired enough to genuinely need it. Another alternative would be a program like Sonic Radar 3, which is like a third-party version of the thing that Fortnite uses, but it can be used in conjunction with normal game sounds. Basically, this program displays a radar on screen, and visualises the volumes and directions the sounds are coming from. If somebody's running up behind you, it will light up in that direction, warning you of the approaching threat. Sounds like cheating, doesn't it? Until you realise that's exactly what your ears do already, and to a greater degree of accuracy and with more information on what that sound is likely to be. Whatever happens, this sort of problem deserves to be heard. I hope more is done to help people with disabilities, especially when it would take so little to help them so greatly. Valve, please fix.